Welcome, everybody, back to the Fretboard Journal podcast. 21 years ago, a buddy and I decided to start our dream guitar magazine, a magazine that felt substantial when you held it, a magazine that wasn't about advertising. It was about great storytelling, long-form interviews, and interesting subjects you weren't going to read about anywhere else. We are still at it. Fretboard Journal's 59th issue is about to mail to everybody. Go sign up at fretboardjournal.com if you haven't yet. I'm a firm believer that print is not dead, especially during these times where sometimes the phone just kind of makes me a little sick to my stomach. Anyhow, at some point along this journey, we started this podcast and then we started doing events. Our Fretboard Summit is taking place in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music, August 20th to 22nd, 2026. I'll include a link in the show notes if anybody wants to register to that. It's our big guitar party. It's our celebration of everything that we love here at the Journal. And speaking of things I love here at the Journal, I love sharing stories from people who may not be on your radar, but should be. And today's guest, Thomm Jutz, just might be one of the most fascinating people in all of Nashville. And I know that is a bold claim. Thomm grew up in Germany, caught a glimpse of American music as a small child, and decided at some point, I'm going to get over to that country. And he did just that. And now he's co-writing songs with Billy Strings. He's been an IBMA Songwriter of the Year, and he just put out this beautiful, beautiful album called Ring-A-Bellin. It has a companion book. I'll include a link if anybody wants to order that. And hearing Thomm's tales and his love for music, I just thoroughly enjoyed this conversation so much. We have so many great podcast interviews lined up, like literally the next 2 months of podcasts are all kind of figured out. I can't wait to share them with you all, but this one is a good one. Every time I peeled back another layer of the onion with Thomm, there was some fascinating other thing that we'd ended up talking about. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you will also go check out the new record. It's streaming on all the platforms right now, Ring-A-Bellin. A quick thanks to our sponsors, Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar here in Seattle, Washington, one of my favorite places to go guitar shopping. Their entire building is filled wall to wall with rare and cool vintage electrics, acoustics, synths, pedals, amps, you name it. They also have a great repair and restoration shop. So follow them at mmguitarbar.com, follow them on Instagram, and you'll get a sense of all the interesting things they pass through their doors. We are also brought to you by Peghead Nation, an instruction portal that is so thoroughly aligned with everything we love here at the Fretboard Journal. They do banjo, guitar, mandolin lessons. So many of their instructors have appeared in our pages or been on this very podcast. So if you want to be a better player and you want to do it in a low-key way at your own pace, go to pegheadnation.com. Use the discount code FRETBOARD when you check out. Let me know how it's going for all of you who've signed up. I'd love to hear how Peghead Nation has affected your playing and your life. Maybe we could share some stories on this very podcast about it. And again, our Fretboard Summit taking place August 20th to 22nd, 2026 in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music. Go to fretboardsummit.org to register. Big announcement that I shared earlier. Antoine Boyer is coming to the Fretboard Summit. This is the guy who dazzled Rick Beato just last month. I think 1 million plus people have watched that video already. Collings Guitars, thank you. They're bringing out Antoine to play. He will be there at the summit. It's going to be incredible. We also have a whole bunch of big names and some folks who've been on this podcast who we're going to be announcing soon. We haven't updated the website yet, but trust me when I say every year the Fretboard Summit outdoes itself, and we just try to put our heart and soul into that weekend. And I'd love to see you all there. And there are like 100 exhibitors already confirmed. Luthiers, bigger brands, all sorts of fun stuff. So if you want to go guitar shopping, if you want to get your hands on the vanguard of acoustic and electric instruments, this is the place to be. This is the coolest guitar gathering imaginable, and I would love to see you there. Enough of my rambling. Thomm Jutz is our guest today. I'll be honest, this interview floored me. The album is great. Go check it out. Well, Thomm, I've been enjoying the new record, and you know, every week on the show, I interview people from the guitar space. Usually they're touring musicians or people who build guitars. talking to you. Your career is so unique. And I don't really talk to a lot of folks who've kind of been able to master the world of songs and song publishing the way you have. And so I kind of want to just get your whole story, because it's an unlikely one.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Well, I was born in the Black Forest of Germany. And when I was 11 years old, I was watching TV, and there was a country music television show in Germany that came on every other week or something for half an hour. And the great Bobby Bare was one of the artists featured that week. And I was a musical kid. I played the piano and the flute, and my parents very much encouraged that. But once I saw Bobby Bare, I was like, it was literally something clicked in my soul or my mind, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. So I went next in the room next door and got my sister's guitar and started playing guitar that day. And Bobby Bare played Detroit City, and he also played a Shel Silverstein song called Pour Me Another Tequila, Sheila, Lay Down and Love Me Again. And the next day I had the chords to Detroit City figured out. And literally I had made up my mind in that moment that I wanted to play that kind of music and find out as much about this kind of music as I could. And it was really one of those moments where you just see an archetypal image that your soul can latch onto, and you go like, okay, this is good enough. If I can do that, that's going to be cool with me. So I started playing guitar, and my parents wanted me to take guitar lessons. I took guitar lessons from a Italian guitarist who had been in a lot of jazz bands in the 50s and 60s, and then through the 70s, and was a guitar teacher at a local music school. And he was a really inspiring guy. You know, he was an endorser for Echo guitars, Italian guitars, if you remember. He had some really good ones. So he was a really inspiring guy. He always wore a suit and tie, and he knew that I was above average talented, and he sort of took me under his wing and showed me everything he could and encouraged me to study classical guitar. So I did that with him till I was about 18 years old. And he said, look, I can't teach you anything more. You need to find somebody else, which is the hallmark of a great teacher, you know, to say like, I'm done. So he introduced me to an Italian guitar professor at a university in Stuttgart, his name was Mario Sica, who had an international career as a performer. And I took lessons with him, and then was admitted into the conservatory in Stuttgart. There were two spaces, and 200 people applied, and I got one of those spaces. And it was a very, very inspiring couple of years studying with him and getting good at classical guitar. But at the same time, I was playing in rock and roll bands and blues bands, and the electric guitar or that kind of music slowly won over the classical thing. Although I'm very grateful for the classical background that I have on guitar. But I was out of school. I was making, sort of a living playing in a rock band, in a power trio. And I had, I was sure I was going to be the next Eric Clapton or whatever, and I did that for a number of years, and then I realized I was kind of stuck, and I still had this dream about moving to Nashville, where Bobby Bare came from. And in the meantime, I had also, when I was about 15 or 16, I had discovered Doc Watson, and I was really, really into that kind of guitar playing, although I didn't know anything about it. I bought my first Doc Watson record without knowing who Doc Watson was. I just loved the photo of him and Merle on the cover. It was an album called Down South. And so I got into all of that, and then I met a songwriter from Texas called Richard Dobson, who was one of the crew around Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt, who came to Nashville in the early 70s. And he was married to a woman from Switzerland, and he had moved to Switzerland, and we got in touch. And he was a wonderful writer, and I sort of had the infrastructure of a band and a van and booking gigs, and so we started playing together and making some records together, and he took me to Nashville and introduced me to some people. And at that point, the fix was in. I knew I had to move to Nashville. And my wife had grown up had lived in the States as a child for 5 years, and she always wanted to come back. And so I applied for a green card, and I won a green card in the green card lottery. we moved here. We became American citizens after 5 years. I played guitar. I thought I was going to play guitar on Lower Broadway, you know, in the bars, and which would have been great. But I've never done that. But I started touring with a guy called David Olney, who's an incredible songwriter. From there, I got an offer from a songwriter called Mary Gauthier to go on the road with her, which was great. We toured all over the US and Europe and Australia. And then I got an offer from Nanci Griffith to play with her. And I played with her for almost 5 years and produced a record for her. And then it became clear to me that the time had come again to move on creatively. And I had built a studio in my house and was getting busier working, doing production work for people. Also started doing some TV and movie stuff, and had gotten much more serious about my songwriting, and started getting some cuts, especially in the world of bluegrass and Americana and those type of things. And then I also got an offer to teach songwriting at Belmont University, which is where I'm at right now. And so here we are, 25 years after moving to Nashville.
You gave me the real fast forward version of all that. Yeah. And I'm just sitting here dumbfounded because so many talented guitarists and songwriters who were born in the States or even near Nashville have found Nashville to be impenetrable and haven't been able to crack the code on how to exist and how to work in that ecosystem. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what's your secret touch here? I mean, obviously you kind of got to view it from afar when you were living in Germany and become an incredibly talented guitarist, you know, kind of in that world. But I just am curious, like, what do you attribute it to? Like, how did you make it work?
Honestly, I don't know what the code is. I don't know that there is a code. And it's a very, it's a story that's probably unique to my set of talents and my ability to get along with people. But what I also learned from playing with Richard Dobson in my 20s was that if you play guitar for a songwriter in the Americana world, you have to be able to follow and not dictate timing above all, because most of those people are not great players and their timing moves, which is not a bad thing at all. You just have to be able to move with it and not against it. And so being on the road with, especially when Mary Gauthier and I started touring, when I started touring with her, I found sort of a little bit of a secret that when you're playing behind a guitar player who's playing finger picking stuff most of the time, meaning eighth notes, you have to play slower note values. If you're trying to play eighth notes with somebody whose timing is not 100%, you're going to get in trouble. So you have to play half as much as they're playing, basically. And that was the secret to making them feel comfortable. And it gave me, space to experiment with more ambient guitar tones, which made the duo that we were in sound much bigger. And I think I was also, some people claim that's because of my German heritage, which I dispute that. I just always found being on time of great value. And when you're playing with other people who are, buying your plane ticket and paying your hotel bill and all of this, it's a good idea to be on time. And I remember the first time I met the bus to go on the road with Nanci Griffith, her road manager said, hey, by the way, it's okay to be early. And I always took that to heart, and I always showed up early and always showed up prepared and being agreeable, and listening to people. If something goes wrong or if they're not feeling good, just being a good dude, like I think most publishers in Nashville will tell you the most important thing is just be a good hang. I hear that all the time, and it's true. Nobody wants to work with anybody who's a pain in the ass, Yeah. So that was that.
Yeah. So be easygoing, be on time, but then when the music starts, be flexible.
Be flexible, absolutely, and don't dictate timing unless it's in a musical context where that's required of you. And play to the lyric, especially if you're playing with singer-songwriters. Take the time to listen to what they're saying on a deeper level than just listening to the song lyrics. Like, get a feel for what's important for them in music. What do they like? when I played with Mary, we opened a bunch of shows for Willie Nelson in England and Ireland. And at that time, Jody Payne was still Willie's guitar player, who had been with him since the late 60s or early 70s. So he had been with him for over 30 years. And Jody and I I was really interested in Jody as a guitar player and as a person. And we sat down one day and had a couple of beers. And he told me, after thousands of gigs, when I walk out and look at Willie every night, I know exactly what mood he's in and what I'm supposed to do. And that really resonated with me, like pay attention to what's going on around you. And if you feel that front person, maybe not even struggle, but be a little hesitant that night or a little, support them, and that'll help you keep your gig and be appreciated for what you do.
Hearing you talk, I'm reminded that, the incredible reissue box set company Bear Family is from Europe, and how many musicians who were kind of past their prime or weren't getting recognized anymore by the States ended up finding a second career going to Europe. Do you think Europeans and Germans are just kind of more history minded than, it's not, hearing you rattle off all these names you've talked about and obsessing over Doc Watson from afar, like not many Americans know who Doc Watson is. So I'm just kind of want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Bear Family has done such important work, regardless of what side of the Atlantic you're on. And Richard Weitze has sold the company, but he's started a new label called More Bears, where he's continuing to dig up more stuff, some real cool historic stuff. And I think he was an important figure in that. There are certain things that I can't really put my finger on why certain artists were as successful as they were in Germany. For instance, Dave Dudley was hugely successful in Germany when he was way past his prime in the States. My theory is that Dave Dudley sang a lot about truck driving songs, and the European audiences have a desire to listen to or go see American artists that represent a certain vision of America that they have, whether that's true or not. And I don't want to name any names, but I can still see that today, that some people do really, really well in Europe who hardly anybody knows here because they're presenting a version of America that's easy for Europeans to buy into. For reasons wrong or right, and I think that's going to change a little bit because America has such, our reputation is so different now that I fear it's going to influence the way people are listening to music as well.
Sure. Your English is obviously incredible. You're an incredible songwriter. Was that one of these things where you've got this incredible education and were speaking fluent English as a kid, or did that come more when you moved to the States?
Well, both. When I was the type of school that I went to, we had to start taking English lessons in grade 5. So I was 11-ish, 12-ish when I started taking English lessons. But the two other factors came into play in my life. Number one, when I was 15, I met my wife. We've been together for 41 years now, and she had just come back from living in the States for 5 years. So her English was accent-free and totally fluent. And so that helped a lot, especially with like playing in cover bands and not understanding some of the lyrics. I could ask her, hey, what are they singing? This was pre-internet, so you couldn't just research song lyrics or whatever. So that helped. But also, I lived in the southwest of Germany in the Black Forest area, and the second largest Canadian air base was very close by where I lived. And my band, the band that I was in when I was like 15 or 16, we started opening some shows for a band of Canadian soldiers, and they took us on the Canadian air base and bought us Canadian cigarettes and a guitar. I remember my first dreadnought was a Fender dreadnought that one of the Canadian guys bought me at one of their tax-free places that they had there, and that was a real influential thing at that time, because they were listening to stuff that I hadn't been exposed to. And they had cooler guitars and cooler amps, and they were driving different cars. And, when you're 15 or 16 and you listen to that to a lot of American music outside of the U.S. That's in any, especially at that time, any inch that you could get closer to that music was very important, especially for me, like because I wanted it so bad. I wanted to be close to those guys. I wanted to record with them. They had a 4-track cassette tape recorder that to me at that time was like, man, that's the coolest thing in the world, And so I just absorbed a lot. And so it was really helpful hanging out with those guys in terms of speaking English.
When did you get to tell Bobby Bare that he's changed the trajectory of your life?
I told him that probably about 10 years ago. I made a couple of records that dealt with the American Civil War and a battle that's significant. That was significant around here, the Battle of Franklin. And a friend of mine, my best friend, Peter Cooper, who passed away in 2022, who was a great songwriter and worked for the Country Music Hall of Fame as well. He knew Bare, and he brought Bare into the studio to record a song that we had written about the Battle of Franklin. And so I told Bare had known through Peter about me and how he changed my life. And he came to my studio the day and we recorded. And he's the only person I ever asked to sign a guitar. And he did. And he misspelled my name, which is even better. And and we're still talking every once in a while. He's 90 years old now, and he's very hesitant to answer the phone or anything, but he knows that story. And I think at first it made him uncomfortable a little bit. He wasn't prepared to take that kind of responsibility. But then about 3 years ago, I think, he wrote me a letter out of the blue, and it's the nicest, sweetest letter I've ever gotten from anybody saying, if it's okay with you, I'm a big fan of yours and your friend Bobby Bare. That was the best thing I ever got.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Battle of Franklin, you did the album Nothing But Green Willow. You've done Celtic work. Do you go through these cycles where you just get really obsessed with a particular part of history or a particular genre, or is this just a day in the life of you?
Well, I'm very driven. My main drive is my intuition. If I get interested in something, I'm like a beagle, like you. If I pick up a scent, I go, and sometimes that's maybe not the most sound strategy in terms of a career, but it's satisfying creatively. And so in terms of the Nothing But Green Willow, I always wanted to make a record based on the songs that Cecil Sharp had collected, the English folk song collector had collected in Appalachia in 1916 and 1918. And I just kept bothering my manager and people about it. And then through that, I was put in touch with Martin Simpson. And Martin is undoubtedly one of the finest guitar players in the world. And it was just, it's also selfish, like if, in a sense that, well, damn it, if I can make a record with Martin Simpson, I want to do it because that's cool. That's fun, and that was fun. I mean, it was so intuitive. Just literally, I picked him up at the airport and within 20 minutes, we were at my studio playing together and we both knew we had never played before together. We had just talked on the phone, but within the first 4 bars, we knew it was going to work out because our timing matched. The way he plays is so different from how I played. Like on that record, I totally stayed away from playing any finger style because I don't need to be doing that when he's in the room. And I played all flat picking stuff on a 48 D18, and he played all finger style stuff in open tunings on one of my Martin Norman Blake models that he really liked. And so I'm just, I'm very interested in old music. I'm very interested in American history. I'm interested in American musical history because it's so young. You can put your hand on it and it's still warm. Everything from the 20s that's not long ago. The 1927 Bristol sessions, that's going to be 100 years next year. That's not a long time at all. And that music is still really alive to me. And also, one thing that plays a factor in that, I think psychologically, is that I grew up in a country that, because of the absurdity of the Third Reich, had no connection to its own folklore anymore because it had been so absurdly misused. So people in Germany don't sing their own folk songs anymore. And I was always drawn to cultures where people did that. like when I was 18, I went to Ireland for the first time, and it just blew me away that people were celebrating their own music and history at the pub every night, basically. And I felt that when I heard Doc Watson, I felt that this music is connected to a place. And that's what attracts me so much to bluegrass players or acoustic players, here in Nashville, Sierra Hull and Justin Moses and all those people there. They may have moved on in their musical expression right now, but they're still so rooted in that tradition. And that goes beyond the musicality of those people. That informs their values, their way of dealing with people and all that. And I was just always really fascinated by that. Like music to me is not just something that you do to make a living. It's something that connects you on a much deeper human level to people, but also to place. Like over the pandemic, I got a graduate degree because I teach here at Belmont University. It was a good idea. And my thesis is on Norman Blake and his songwriting and how it connects to place, because he's always stayed in this one place in Rising Fawn, Georgia, other than when he went on tour. And so place is something that I think a lot, because I moved from one place to another place, and I write a lot about this place here. So, place as a concept of not just geography, but geography in a dialogue with people and history and political decisions and environmental decisions and the railroad and the disappearance of the railroad and all of that. And that's why America it's just so damn interesting,
Yeah. Have you visited Norman at Rising Fawn, right?
No, I have not. I met Norman once at a Folk Alliance thing. We talked for about 10 minutes and it was just me saying, hey, I'm a big fan and I love everything you do. And Mike Compton is a mutual friend. And he was like, oh yeah, that's nice. And then when I wrote that thesis, I wrote him a letter and said, look, I would love to talk to you. I'm not going to bother you about your family or things that you don't want to talk about. I don't even want to talk about guitars. I just want to talk about your songwriting with you. And he didn't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I get that. That's cool. If I wouldn't want to talk to me neither if I went home and play.
But do you get this, obviously you're more immersed in American culture than most Americans at this point, sadly for most of America. But do you have a sense, or do you have a desire to go visit these places that you've heard immortalized in song and on albums?
100%. I got in touch with a friend, put me in touch with one of Norman's friends, a gentleman called Joel McCormick, who's a magistrate judge down there. And so I met him a couple miles from Norman's house, and he showed me around. He showed me where the Ridge Road is, that Ridge Road gravel was written about, and it showed me where the driveway is, and it showed me the Battelle Yard that's in Ginseng Sullivan and all that kind of stuff, And it makes you listen. It makes you hear the music completely differently if you've been to those places, especially because places like Rising Fawn, Georgia, I mean, there's such romance in the landscape. If you go down there, it's just overwhelmingly beautiful, and you can just imagine how remote it was before the railroad came, and now it's remote again because the railroad is not going through there anymore. The only thing in Rising Fawn really is a truck stop by the interstate, and that's it, and a couple of houses. But also, I distinctly remember going to the Carter family fold in Hilton's, Virginia for the first time, and I've never listened to the Carters the same way ever since. It's just place informs the way we perceive music, And so I still have many places on my list that I want to visit not because there's some kind of juju or something, that would be some form of musical tourism. I'm not much interested in that. I just want to feel it, like what's the air like? What's the wind sound like? Those type of things.
I love it. Okay, so we've spent 20-something minutes establishing that you're one of the most fascinating people in the music space, which I'm incredibly grateful to discover. You have a new record coming out, but before we talk about Ring-A-Bellin, your album, working for you, you're doing for you, your passion project, you mentioned Belmont, you mentioned your studio. How can we wrap our heads around a day in the life of you these days? Like how many different things are going on? Are you trying to scale back on your projects and collaborations? Are you dividing your days up by from 9 to noon, I'm just writing songs, from noon to whenever I'm doing something else? Like, how do you do it?
Very busy. I teach Tuesday and Thursdays from 2 till 6 at the university, but then there's other time commitments required for that. I keep Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays open to write. So I typically co-write 3 days a week. I work every weekend in the studio with a friend of mine on music or on TV and movie related or media music projects. And whenever if I have my 3 months break over the summer from university, I line up recording projects, and it's very satisfying. But I am not a workaholic. I never work later than 7 o'clock at night. I don't want to. And I don't start working at 5 o'clock in the morning. I get up very early. I go for a run first thing in the morning. And I try to read in the mornings. I try to play guitar a little bit first thing in the morning. I still try to practice to keep certain classical things, just keeping my fingers moving and my hands working and all of that. So it's busy, but it's very good busy, and the more I love creating with other people. That's when I'm the happiest, when I'm writing with people, when I'm recording with other people. And, through this record, I've also gone back to recording everything live, live vocals, live solos, no overdubs. If you don't get it, then you just do it again, I mean, there's a place for layering tracks and all that. And I do that when I do stuff for TV and movie. But for this kind of music, I just want to simplify. And I have some sessions lined up with Mike Compton and some other folks where I just want to record with everybody in the same room without headphones even, just to get back to that real natural sense of intonation and timing and all of that.
And I know you said early in our conversation, one of your aspirations was like, maybe you're going to play Broadway, Nashville. Are you playing live at all much these days? You are.
I'm playing a lot right now because I'm promoting this new record. I play the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, which is a wonderful songwriter venue, about once a month, a little less than that. I go on the road. I play about 40 shows a year with in varying, some of them solo, some of them with my friend Eric Brace. And that's about as much as I want to do. I'm always bitching when I'm not playing enough. And then if I have too many gigs, I'm bitching about having too many gigs. So it's just, that part is hard for me to figure out, It's also, I take this work my work at this university very seriously because I'm working with young songwriters, And so literally, if they're first-year students and I'm their instructor, it is really important work because you can make the difference in somebody's life to keep going or to go like, this sucks, I'm not going to do that. Or it's too treacherous a career path or this or that, and I really want those people to be inspired and have find the same fulfillment and creativity that I have. And so I want to take this work very seriously, otherwise there's no sense in doing it.
Since you brought it up, I want you to unpack a little bit, like, what is your teaching strategy? Are you trying to get young people as diving into the back catalogs as you did, or do you have a different strategy to get them engaged and feel motivated and inspired to write a song?
Well, we have certain syllabi for every class that we have to follow that other people have developed, but the good thing about a university like Belmont is that you can stretch that quite a bit, and make it your own, and that's what they want you to do. So, my students listen to things that are very different from what I listen to, and so the way I approach it is that I want them to tell me what they're listening to, and I want to learn from that, and I want to understand why that's important, and then we start listening to some other stuff, like the first class every semester when it's freshmen, we listen to Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come," and we go like, what does that mean when he says, "I was born by the river"? What river is he talking about? And there's a biblical reference in that. And then we get into the civil rights movement, and then we get into the fact that he was in the Soul Stirrers before he ever did what he did as a solo artist. And then we listen to the songs that they write, and then we listen to, you know, some stuff that was written around the corner. Three Wooden Crosses was written by just across the parking lot here from the building that we're in. And so I want them to get an understanding of that. And so we slowly unpack it, and we talk about more technical aspects of songwriting and why things have to rhyme and how they can rhyme and when they don't have to rhyme. And they tell me why Noah Kahan is the biggest thing ever and Gracie Abrams. And I go like, I accept that. If you like that, maybe listen to Joni Mitchell's Blue, and let's see what happens. Let's see what happens when you do that. And so it's great. It's when it's good, it's very, very, very inspiring and fulfilling. But it's like teaching an hour and 15-minute class is like playing a gig for an hour and 15 minutes, because it gets very intense. You know, people come out in class and write songs about that. People talk about their religious views. Belmont is a Christian university, but it's not required that students are of one faith or another. So people discover, you know, they're away for the first time and in their life and are in a big city, and they're introduced to a lot of new ideas and a lot of new people. And, you know, so it gets pretty intense, but it's great.
I can't imagine the journey that they go on and that you go on, watching them grow before your very eyes. That's incredible.
It's a lot of fun. And you know, I don't talk to them about what I've done, but because they get interested, sometimes they find out that I recently had a couple of Billy Strings cuts, and then all of a sudden my market value rises tremendously in their eyes, you know. So that's fun too. And they go like, "Why didn't you tell us?" It's like, well, it's not my job to tell you about me. When are you playing? It's like, well, you can find out when I'm playing. You guys are on Instagram all the time. You know, I'm not going to tell you. And so we're playing these games too.
How does that work? I mean, you brought up Billy Strings, and we'll just use that as an example that everyone can wrap their head around. Like, how does the songwriting for others work? Are you writing songs and it's like, oh, I've got this artist in my head, I got to get these lyrics to them or this demo to them? Is it all word of mouth? Does stuff just get passed around Music Row constantly? Like, how, all of the above?
Yeah, pretty much all of the above. For me, with the Billy stuff and with most of the other stuff, it's just writing with the people. So I wrote with Billy. We were introduced and hung out a little bit and became friends. And he was, you know, we were both interested in writing together, and it's been so much fun. I mean, he's such a good guy and such a good singer and such an incredible guitar player. And his knowledge of and love for this music is unlike anything I've seen, you know. And he's so deeply into it, especially Doc, and just reveres these people. And it's just I couldn't think of anything more fun than sitting down and writing a couple of songs and then hearing what that amazing band comes up with, you know. So, but then other times you write songs not with an artist. Like I write with them. I don't write with a whole lot of people. Like I don't write with 50 different people. I probably write with a cast of 10 to 12 people, and you go like, hey, this song might be cool for so-and-so, and you write at a publishing company, and so you know the song pluggers, and you go like, hey, could you get this to Buddy Cannon, or could you get this to X? And then sometimes it works, you know. Nashville has changed so much that right now I feel is a perfect time to just be as wildly creative as you want to. Like if you think you need to make demos like in the 90s that sound just huge and sound like the record, I think you're wasting money and potentially time as well. People right now are really more interested in hearing unfettered creativity. Just do what you want, you know. Send us a demo with 2 guitars and a great 3-part harmony vocal thing, or just a real, you know, I don't know how to fully express that, but it feels like everybody's looking for something right now, and nobody needs to have like the prescribed guitar tones or drum sounds that we used to live with, you know. I mean, you can hear that if you listen to country radio, which I don't do a lot of, but you can hear that it's changing rapidly, you know.
Yeah.
And it's much more organic, probably through the rise of Chris Stapleton and Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle and the Steel Drivers and all those people.
Jason Isbell. I mean, there's so many.
It's absolutely, yeah.
I think, you know, and I don't know how the Billy Strings encounters have gone, but like, I'm guessing because you are so historic leaning, because you love bluegrass and instrumental music, you're probably busting out these classic Doc Watson tunes and just jamming with people. And it's not like, here, let me show you my song. Like, it's an icebreaker of sorts that, you know, this material that these other guys geek out on.
Honestly, in terms of being able to play it or knowing the material so that I can play it, that's not the case with me. I've never been somebody to sit down and learn this Tony Rice solo or this, that. Not because I don't find value in that. That's just not, I know it can be of great importance, but it's not how it worked for me, and I don't really understand why. But you are very, very correct in terms of just having a mutual love for the music. That goes very deep. That's the icebreaker, you know, just knowing that we're taking this very seriously. We're not talking about we understand, you know, like Guy Clark wrote this fantastic line, one of the greatest lines ever written. I've seen the David, I've seen the Mona Lisa too, and I've heard Doc Watson play the Columbus Stockade Blues. That's how important Doc and that kind of music is in our pantheon, you know. So we just understand how important it is to us, and that's the icebreaker. That's the fertile ground, you know.
Perfect segue. You've got this new record, Ring-A-Bellin. I hear Delmore Brothers. I hear Jimmy Ross. I mean, I hear real classic early country. I hear some more modern Americana stuff. Like, talk to me about how this collection of songs came to be and why you've decided to put it out.
Well, I hadn't made a solo record since 2020, and that record was a bluegrass album for the most part, with a 5-piece bluegrass band, and then some of it was just me solo playing and singing. And I have made a bunch of records in between with Tammy Rogers of the Steel Drivers and Tim Stafford, a great bluegrass player and singer and guitar player, and the Martin Simpson record. And so I've been really, really interested in analytical psychology the last 10, 15 years. And that's been something I've read a lot about and I've thought along those lines a lot. And I realized that a bunch of my songs talk about those ideas, although not in an overt kind of way where it's like, you know, I'm not quoting Carl Jung or something, but the ideas are in there. And these 18 songs on this record speak to that to a certain degree. And they document, I think, my development as a person and as an artist over the last 25 years. Not in the sense that it's an autobiographical record. It's not a record that goes like, in 1999 I did this, or then I did this. It's more like the mindset, how the mindset and the approach to art changes. And also because of what I like to listen to these days, I wanted to make this record 99% live. And I also wanted to start every song with the smallest musical unit that made sense for it. So sometimes it was just me singing and playing, and that's how it went on the record. I wanted to experiment with upright bass piano and acoustic guitar, and not just ambient stuff, but have the bass player, you know, kick into a Root 5 bluegrassy kind of groove and seeing if I can solo over that, you know, and staying very true to very traditional structures musically, but contextualizing them a little differently, but not in a modernistic way in the sense of adding weird tones or reverbs or whatever, but going like, let's see what else can we do with this very traditional minded music with traditional acoustic instruments and add something new to it. It was a lot of fun and challenging too, you know, because I'm not the world's greatest singer, but so you have to learn to live with a lot of imperfections. And sometimes those imperfections end up being the things that you enjoy the most about the experience and about the record. It was very satisfying as a guitar player because it was all the solos and everything was recorded on the fly. So it's very improvisational. And I hadn't done that in a long, long time. So I wasn't sure if I still had that fire or that desire to do it, or the willingness to live with my shortcomings as a guitar player, So, and it gave me the opportunity to play a lot of different guitars and play them in different styles. And yeah, that's how all that worked.
I asked you a while ago about your schedule and scheduling. Did you give yourself sort of a finite amount of time and a deadline, and it's like these 3 weeks I'm going to record this, or did this go on for months?
No, I didn't give myself a timeline at all. I booked a session with my friend Mark Fain, fantastic upright bass player, and we just worked. We recorded 5 songs in about 4 hours or so, and 3 of them were what I wanted to use on the record. And then I booked another session with a couple other people, and it's like, okay, we'll keep those 3 or 4 songs. And so it was more like that. It's probably spread out over about half a year.
Okay. And you mentioned analytical psychology being kind of a theme here. And, most songs in general are about love or loss, or as Townes Van Zandt said, sad songs and zippity-doo-dah or whatever. You're obviously thinking on a deeper level about your own catalog. Like, what does that actually mean? And if you're willing to tell us, because obviously you've probably been doing some soul searching too along the way.
What does analytical psychology mean? Or
and how are you hearing that in your songs? I mean, both things. Yes. I want to hear both.
Yes. Well, my understanding of analytical psychology is that it's driven by images, by archetypal images, and the image is not only a picture. An image can be a picture, but it can also be much deeper. Like seeing Bobby Bare as an 11-year-old kid was seeing Bobby Bare on TV. That's a picture, but it's also an image of something. It's an image of a creator. It's an image of an outcast. It's an image of, to me, probably like a lot of cowboy fascination that went into that. And the image of Doc Watson, well, that was a photo, but that was much more. I knew that there was depth in that photo that was in that image, that went much deeper. I couldn't articulate that at the time, but I felt it. And so every song on this record is very driven by an image, like the Ramblin' Gamblin' Blues, the first song on the record, is, driven by my idea of Jimmy Rogers, that time, how people traveled in that time, how important travel is in the history of the United States because it's such a big country. Modes of travel, steam trains, steamboats are so important. So that's the setting of that song. And every song also kind of maybe documents where I was mindset-wise a while ago or years ago, and where I'm at mindset-wise now. Things happen. Like I said, my friend Peter Cooper passed away. He was my co-creator, confidant, everything. When you lose somebody like that, things change dramatically, and you have to come to terms with that. But this is not a record about grief. It's just a record about how to grow as a person, as an artist. I mean, I'm not a mainstream artist. I'm very much working in the corners of the music business and the remote corners of the music business. And that's also something you have to come to terms with, like waiting for the big financial payoff that you're going to wait for a long time. It's not going to come, and it's not necessary. It's about finding fulfillment. It's about leading a creative life. And so analytic psychology to me is about leading a creative life, leading a symbolic life that's driven by images, trusting your intuition, becoming more free, becoming more creative, becoming more mature, becoming less stressed out about things. All good stuff in my book.
This is all, we're all working on this. Is it safe to say that and this is a big album, 18 tracks, for every track, is there like an image in your mind that the track, yeah?
In mine, yes. And I tried to document that. There's in a companion book that comes with the
I wanted to ask you about that. Like, hardcover books don't usually come along with the LP, the LP as an option. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, with a physical product in the world of music losing importance, although vinyl is regaining some importance, but with CDs and just mechanical product overall, physical product losing importance. I just wanted to do something that was a little out of the ordinary. And I had these essays that relate to every song on the record. And I could have just made a big booklet, but I felt like, nah, I want to do something a little different. And a good friend of mine who's a wonderful graphics designer had some ideas, and I wanted to include some original art by artists that I really like. And so, honestly, I was just completely in over my head. I had no idea how to pull something like that off. And my friend Gina, who's the graphics designer, very graciously said, "Why don't you just let me do this?" And I would have been too shy to ask her, and she just ran with this and turned it into a 40-page hardcover book on art paper that's much more beautiful than anything I could have ever done, and it includes a lot of original artwork by other people. And so the images, some of these images that inspired some songs or that relate to these songs are documented in the book through photography or stuff like that. But I also sent some of the songs to friends of mine who are artists and said, would you mind just making something that is inspired by this? But not in the sense that if it talks about a steamboat, don't paint a steamboat. Yeah. Like, what else do you associate with that? And they all did that in ways that just completely blow my mind. And so that's how this whole thing came together. And it's cool. I really, really enjoyed doing that.
And the book, I think I saw, is available on your website, right?
Is only available at my gigs or at my website.
Yeah. How did you know how many to print, or have you not figured that out yet?
Oh, I still don't know. I just printed probably too many.
I know that feeling as a publisher of a magazine. Yeah. No, I know that feeling well.
And what a beautiful magazine it is.
Oh, thank you. Gear-wise, I mean, we've been talking about nostalgia and history and these images that have an impact on us and carry us through our lives. How are you as a musician with your tools of the trade? Like, how do you feel about guitars? You mentioned that you got to use a variety for this album. Do you have a few that just are the ones you pick up day after day, or do you have a whole wall of guitars behind this backdrop that I see here on the Zoom?
Well, at home at my studio, I have a whole bunch of guitars. I love the guitar so much. Honestly, one of my biggest fears in life is not being able to play the guitar, because that's what it started out with for me. You know, I became a songwriter much later, but I'm still considering myself a guitar player first. Well, the tools of the trade are, I have a 48 D18 that I really like. Over the last couple of years, acquired a Martin Norman Blake model, which is a triple O with a double O sound hole and a 12-fret neck, which doesn't exist in the vintage world. But Norman designed that guitar together with Martin, and they're really, really cool guitars. So I have the 18 version of that, and I have the 28 version of that Indian Rosewood, and I love both. Amazing guitars. If you can find one, get them. And they didn't make too many of them. I recently got a 1935 Oahu that's sort of the poor man's Nick Lucas, really deep body. Used to be Mark Ribot's, and I kind of live half of my life on the Retrofred website, and so every once in a while I get stuck on something. And another cool instrument that I played on this album is a 1922 Gibson 6 guitar banjo with a 14-inch head, so it's huge. And it's a very strange sound. It doesn't sound like a 5-string banjo at all. It sounds almost oriental.
Is this what the trapdoor? Is that era of the Gibson, or
some of them have a trapdoor, but mine doesn't.
Okay.
It's got a snake head.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful neck. It's a really cool instrument that's just, it's unique. And at this point in my life, I think I have enough guitars to, if I buy something new, I just want it to be funky and different. And another guitar that I used a lot is a 1931 National Duolian that I probably I had it worked on by 5 different people over the course of 3 years till somebody figured out how to finally get it to the internet correctly.
Yeah, national. Do you take it to your car mechanic or do you take it to your luthier? It's sort of a toss up.
It was honestly, I had it. So many people had worked on it, and it was still absolutely not acceptable in terms of intonation to me. And then finally, somebody here in Nashville, can I say who it is?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Gerald Strickland at Music City Vintage Guitars, an amazing guitar tech. He figured out that there were about 2 millimeters missing in terms of the scale length, and so he took the neck off and and added a mahogany shim that's about 2 millimeters, and that totally fixed it. But nobody figured that out before. So the slots of the frets were cut correctly, but the whole scale was too short. So how he figured all that out, I have no idea. But now it's cool. Now it intonates well. It's a really mysteriously good sounding instrument. It has the name Claude Cornelius Waddell etched in the back of the guitar in 2 different spots. And I did a little bit of research, and the only guy I can come up with who was called Claude Cornelius Waddell was a sheriff in Asheville, North Carolina in the early 50s. And it's a 1931 instrument, so it could work that it was that guy. Another guitar that I used on this is a 1930 Gibson LO, all mahogany guitar. Scary light. I mean, I'm so scared that it's just such a fragile instrument, but it holds up great. And it's a wonderful instrument. I subscribe a little bit to the idea that Norman Blake has, that if you want to play music that inspired by that era, the 20s and 30s, you should at least have played some of those instruments to get a feel for it. You know, what might have been possible, and also get your mind blown by how incredibly well people like, can anybody believe that Blind Blake could do what he could do on the instruments that were available to him, and the setup work that was available to him, and the strings that were available to him? I mean, that kills me. And there were no luthiers around at that time where you could just go to and go like, hey, can you set this up for me for $75? So that guitar was sort of an entry point into that. Mike Compton owned that guitar before I did, and he was like, you need this guitar more than I do. So he sold it to me. There's a couple others, but those are the more important ones. I have a couple of modern 18 style guitars, a D18, and then a quadruple O18 that used to be Peter's guitar, and they're both Singer mahoganies that come from Groans, and they're not instruments that I love, but they're just unproblematic instruments that you can take on the road, and they will work and do the job. And if something needs to be adjusted, it can be adjusted fairly easily, and that's good enough.
Yeah. You mentioned your home studio is, a studio can mean lots of different things. It could be a walk-in closet. It could be a big studio, a giant studio. How big is your studio? And are there a couple of prized pieces of gear there, microphones or recording equipment that you just absolutely adore?
Totally. It's a part of my house. It's about 1,000 square feet. So it's good size. It's got a control room, a fairly good sized drum room, and then 2 smaller rooms. So I can do whole band stuff. The prized possessions in terms of gear, I love AA ribbon mics and gravitate more and more toward recording most of what I record with ribbon mics, especially my own stuff. I have a Neumann SM69, which is a stereo microphone that's really nice. I have a couple of vintage Siemens mic pre's that a friend of mine in Germany yanked out of some old broadcast studios and re-racked, and he also re-racked some Telefunken V276s that are called the Brick, and they're amazing mic pre's. So a bunch of stuff that I really like.
That's so cool.
But my favorite mic, not in terms of sound, but as I became, again, through Peter Cooper, I was introduced to Tom T. Hall, one of the greatest songwriters who ever lived, and we became friends, and he knew of some of the songs that I'd written in the bluegrass world and was very complimentary of that. And one day, Peter and I went over there to have coffee with Tom T, and he said, I got something for you. It was right before Christmas, and he brought out cheap ribbon mic that he had used on hundreds of bluegrass songs that he had written. And he said, I always felt like my voice sounded better on this microphone for some reason. And then he said, I recorded several hundred songs with this, but I think it's still got plenty in them, and I want you to have this. And then so this is kind of, it's probably $100 microphone from made in China, but it's just, and so nice to have that history lived at my place, you know.
And does it have the same magic for you? Do you sound good with it?
I used it on the last song on the album. Yeah, it's really cool. It's dark, but, you know, most ribbons are dark to a certain degree. It's a little noisy, but it's cool. You know, like singing into it, I always feel like, especially since Tom T passed away, he was such an incredible guy. He was so kind and such an amazing writer. And, you know, you see, he never met my wife, but he sent her flowers on Valentine's Day.
What? That's incredible.
That's the kind of guy he was.
See, these are the Nashville stories I want to hear more of. These are so cool. Yeah. And is the mic labeled or anything, or just like a weird unlabeled Chinese mic?
I think it's an MXR or MXL.
Oh, okay.
MXL, like one of those things. But, you know, you would have absolutely loved Peter Cooper. He had so many stories of that, and he was friends with so many of those people. And they respected him so much because he knew so much about the music and loved the music more than anybody I've known, you know. And he could get the good stories out of people because they trusted him, and they trusted him to present those stories in the right context and not make him sound like a bunch of hillbillies or something, you know. So they understood the respect that he had for them.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a little correspondence when the Fretboard Journal first started, but not like you guys. So
that's wonderful.
This album comes out early April 2026.
April 3, yeah.
And then are you doing a big show around it? Are you doing a bunch of shows around it? What are you doing?
I'm doing a couple of shows around Nashville here in the next couple of weeks. I have a CD release show on April 19 at the Bluebird Cafe here in Nashville, and have a piano player with me and a bass player. And then my friend Eric Brace and I are going to Europe in May to play 2 weeks of shows in Germany and Holland. And then I have a bunch of sessions booked over the summer, and already, you know, I have two albums almost done that I want to put out, not solo albums, but collaborative things, and working on another one and just keeping it going, you know.
Are you keeping the cycle of the music industry that we talked about alive, where you're bigger in Europe than you are in Nashville? Do you play bigger venues there? No, it doesn't work that.
You know, I mean, Nashville is probably the hardest place in the world to draw unless you're a big artist, you know, because there's so much music going on. So I don't know. Nothing that I do is big, and that's the way it is, and that's cool.
I love it. This album's incredible, and now that I've heard the story behind it, I of course have to dive into it and listen to it again and again. And I want to get that book too, because that sounds incredible. I got to order that. So thank you. It's been a joy talking to you, and the next time I'm in Nashville, I'm going to track you down, and we're going to talk guitars. Yeah,
I would love that. We can. I don't know if you know this, but Belmont University has a museum called the GIG, the Gallery of Iconic Guitars. Have you been?
No, I have not been. I've heard about it.
I'll be more than happy to take you. If I take you because I'm faculty, we can take stuff off the walls. I forgot to say one thing. Do I have time to say that?
Of course.
One of the most important guitars I played on this record is one made by a friend of mine called Rufus Thames, who's a guitar maker in Bristol, Virginia. And it's a slope-shouldered D18 12-fret that's based on a 32 that he had access to and took measurements from. But I took Rufus to that museum, and there is a 1933 D28 12-fret slope-shouldered, but with a paddle headstock, not with a slotted headstock, which is the only one he's ever seen and the only one I've ever seen. And that guitar alone is worth going to that museum. I mean, it's unbelievably great. And the collection also has 40 D45s, 40.
Uh-huh.
It has complete sets of lures, like mandolin, mandola, mandocello, archtop guitar. It has Gibson advanced jumbos. It has one of the early Nick Lucas's. It's an amazing collection of over 400 instruments and 100 are on display. It's a collection that belonged to Artie Shaw's son, the big band leader.
Yeah.
And he collected vintage guitars, and he had them in his personal residence without burglar alarm, without fire alarm, without anything, till he passed away. And George Gruen is the curator of the collection. And I think we have about 6,000 or 7,000 tourists go through the museum every year, which is somewhat astonishing that many people do that, because it's a little bit hidden. But I want more guitar enthusiasts to come see that, because it's truly one of the most magnificent collections of vintage guitars I've seen. So when you come, long story short, we'll go and geek out.
Yeah, it sounds like we need a Fretboard Journal meetup in Nashville where you give us the guided tour. Whoever's listening, we'll pick a day. We'll make this happen.
The curator of the museum is a good friend, and maybe it's something that you want to write about in the magazine at some point.
Yeah. All right. We've got projects. We're going to work together.
All
right.
Awesome. What a pleasure to meet you. Thank you, man.
Great meeting you. Thank you so much, Thomm, and congratulations on the album and everything.
Thank you. Great. All the best to the magazine. It's awesome. I love it.
All right. That was my conversation with Thomm. If you loved it, share it with your friends. Issue 59 of the Fretboard Journal is going to mail next week. Everybody subscribe today.